Hello, and welcome to the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm in my new office, and it's all sort of dolled up. And you'll have to go to YouTube if you're listening and sort of see. It's like I got a fancy chair now. I have my ukuleles on the wall. I'm at peace.
And while you're there, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That was slick, Lance.
See what I
Like
did
you
there?
just like slow rolled that.
Boom.
This episode is an awesome conversation with Seth Cook.
Yeah, I didn't know him, and it was very fun getting to know him a little bit and hear about his restaurant, which I hope to get to enjoy sometime whenever the world goes back to being a different thing.
Yeah, he's my coffee sensei, and he loves great food, and he's an amazing tuba player, and he's from Massachusetts, and he went to Northwestern, and yeah, we have a lot in common.
I liked. He's a guy who likes to learn stuff, and
Yes.
that's I'm all about that. So he's
Yep.
becoming a master sommelier, and he knows a ton about coffee, and it's like that's my kind of human. That kind of lifelong learner
Yep.
thing is my bag.
Indeed. Speaking of learning, guess what, Lance?
And a bag.
February 27th and 28th, the Brass Junkies Tuba Workshop. We are
Wow.
selling both 1-day and 2-day passes. The 1-day pass is only $39. That is a warm-up class with Mike Roylance, a clinic with Roger Bobo, and a clinic with Velvet Brown. And
Woot.
and by the way, you sign up for that, you get to watch that in our archives long term. So you get that warm-up class with Mike Roylance long term. You can also ask questions of Roger and Velvet. And then Sunday, the 2-day pass gets you not only Saturday but also Sunday, which is another warm up class. This one with Deanna Swoboda, a master class with Patrick Sheridan, a master class with David Zirkle, and a Q&A and hang with the two of us knuckleheads.
Aw.
And the 2-day pass comes
But
with
wait, there's
two
more.
bonus sessions, which are these are sold separately, but they are free of charge. One is the Music Practice Coach Workout Builder with you, Lance LaDuke, which if you're not a tuba player, you can buy that event on its own. It's $29. You're going to leave there with a full practice plan. It's going to be awesome. And then the other one is Tuesday, March 2nd, which is a Winning the Audition with Carol Yonch of the Philadelphia Orchestra, where she's going to talk all about her preparation for the Philadelphia Orchestra audition that she won as a 20-year-old. And also she's had some students that have had some success. And so she's going to share all of the audition advice and, prep knowledge that she shares with her students. So 1-day pass, 2-day pass, go to pedalomedia.com/tuba-workshop. And also, I'm very excited to announce this is a brand new thing that we have launched a scholarship drive, and this is in conjunction with the Harmony Arts Foundation. That Pedal Media is going to match each donation, and if you donate half of a 2-day pass, which is $39.50, Pedal Media is going to match the other half. And we are going to get a tuba player who would not otherwise be able to attend this. They are going to be able to come for absolutely no charge whatsoever. The donation is completely tax deductible, and with the help of our friends at the Harmony Arts Foundation. And our goal, which is aggressive, but our goal is to get 100 scholarships. That is what we are shooting for. You can buy one, you can buy 5, you can buy 10. We're going to give some special shout outs to people at the higher levels there. But if you go to pedalnotemedia.com/scholarship, then you will be able to find out more about that. The link is in the show notes as always. But if you could help us with that scholarship drive at all, if you are able, it would be awesome. So
We're not so bad.
no, we're not so bad. 2-day, 1 and 2-day passes are available now. The music practice coach event, the the winning the audition with Carol. Those are both sold separately if you're interested. And then what we really want to push is this scholarship drive. So, which is at petalomedia.com/scholarship. So, Lance, is there anything that I am forgetting?
I have no more ado.
We got other stuff to plug, but that's enough plugging for the beginning of this episode. So, without further ado, here is the conversation that we had with the Kennedy Center Opera Orchestra's Seth Cook. And today on the Brass Junkies, we have one of my good friends who is one of the best tuba players in the world. He's a coffee expert. He's from Boston. He's practically the perfect human. No pressure. His name is Seth Cook. Seth, how are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you guys both for asking me to be on. It's a honor to get to join you guys. It's such an illustrious list of other people that I feel pretty unworthy.
I don't know what to do with sincerity.
This is already off to a really bad start. That's like my phone is buzzing with people bothering me. I'm getting Slack notifications. Yeah, you're being sincere and humble. It's like, what are we? And that's going to do it for this episode of the Brass Junkies. So Seth is the principal tuba. It's not like there's like more than one. I know it's like a pay thing and it's a contract thing, but he's principal of one tuba of the longest orchestra name in the world, I think, because there's two names, right? It's the Kennedy Center Opera Orchestra, but then there's also, what's the other name?
Washington National Opera Orchestra. And actually the first one's Kennedy Center Opera House Orchestra. They clarified that for us. So.
Oh, okay. Got it. Just in case the people across the hall happen to be playing some opera music, but not in the opera house. It's like,
exactly, which they do from time to time, so.
There's a fierce rivalry between the National Symphony and the Kennedy Center Opera House. They don't even speak to each other. It's very, they have like separate parts of the parking garage. It's very awkward. No, that's not true. So I think that, there's a lot to unpack about him musically, but one thing that is very interesting about Seth is that you own a restaurant.
Yeah, let's see. Just 3.5 years ago, my cousin and I ventured out and opened our own restaurant. I had been working in restaurants since 2010 was the first restaurant I opened, but I didn't own. And I kind of fell in love with it, and it scratches an itch that, kind of music also does as well. The creative hospitality connection, that whole world, it all kind of lives in the same place. It's just a different medium. So it's been kind of nice.
I've had some fascinating conversations with Seth over the years on music business and entrepreneurship topics, when generally the people who have like the steady, tier 1A orchestra or military band gigs don't think about that a lot, because and that's not a criticism. They don't need to, right? Like there's a whole different list of things that you have to think about regularly. But because of your restauranting, and that's obviously incredibly entrepreneurial, and so I always value, and you also have a really unique, I think, perspective on the music business as well. So what the hell is it like running a restaurant in the middle of a pandemic?
I'll tell you, like March 12th was like a doomsday. It was kind of crazy where, I got into restaurants because in 2008, 2009, gigs started drying up. I had just gotten married, and I had always had a love for coffee. Going to NEC Prep, I don't know if you ever went to Espresso Royal Cafe, but like I started going there when I was like 12, and I had developed a real good passion. My first job actually ever was at Dunkin' Donuts, so true Boston all the way through. There were
probably 4 within a mile radius of his house. The problem is deciding which one to apply to first. So
I had to apply to all of them because 4 of them wouldn't accept me. But I'd always loved coffee and been passionate about it. And my wife was just like, gigs are slowing down. what's the plan? And I didn't know. It was kind of scary. And I applied to 14 restaurants and nobody would hire me because I had no real experience. I had just gotten the job at UVA, so I would needed flexibility going back and forth to Charlottesville. And so it was kind of scary in that sense. But this one restaurant group, they just took a chance on me. They were opening a restaurant in 9 months. And so I was on the very kind of opening team and going through that process. And that restaurant turned out to be really successful. And it was a really great time. And restaurant then kind of provided for me a balance for when gigs slowed down. And so like that restaurant group allowed me to have the flexibility to take time off whenever I needed. And I built my schedule kind of opposite the NSO schedule, so that if like Steve ever had to call out last minute or a last minute gig came up, I would not already be guaranteed. I wouldn't be working already. So it'd be real easy for me to maintain doing the work I was doing.
See, if you were less smart about that, then I would sub with the NSO more.
But yeah, so I was there for 7 years and I liked being there, but I reached like kind of the top I could go with them. And my cousin, who is really ambitious, and you know, he and I have been very close since growing up. Birth, we're the same age. He was like, we should do it on our own, and I was really nervous how this was going to affect everything. I didn't have the full-time job at the Kennedy Center yet in the opera. I was acting at the time, and you know, his vision and just a lot of luck came together, and our restaurant opened, and it's been super gratifying. But, you know, when COVID hit, you know, I always assumed I'd have restaurants if music kind of fell down. Like if we ever had a strike at the Opera House or something, and all of a sudden restaurants got shut down and opera got shut down at the same time. The Opera House, we haven't worked since, we were doing 2 operas then, and we haven't worked since, and probably won't work until September.
You should have also had a travel agency. That would have been perfect.
Get all those nice posters too. It gives you a lot of good vision. Yeah, well, we were really fortunate with the restaurant. I went off salary immediately, and we pivoted very quickly to a retail model with delivery and pickup. And we've been able to retain our whole staff and actually stay open and stay afloat this whole time, which has been really great. Wow. We've been very fortunate compared to a lot of restaurants that have closed. So
I think there's a lot of parallels in music, but which of the initiatives that you've launched in reaction to COVID do you think you'll maintain?
Well, this is the thing, actually, Lance. It's really interesting is, you know, the restaurant industry has gone through this metamorphosis to kind of handle COVID. And like, so we never did delivery or pickup or online sales. And they've now become obviously a driving force in our business. And when we reopen, we envision keeping that. And obviously the demand won't be as strong, but if we can fill our restaurant with people on site and also maintain maybe half of the delivery pickup orders, all of a sudden our restaurant that had a capacity of like 60, 70 people, now we can possibly be serving 150 to 200 people a night. And like there's a restaurant downtown in DC that's Michelin star, and they had a small restaurant, maybe 40 seats. And they kind of went to a similar thing with this pickup. And the food you get is beautiful. It looks Michelin. It costs $40 a person per meal, which is, I think, very reasonable for Michelin food. And now all of a sudden you have this other aspect of revenue that you never had before. And I think it improves the business. But for music, we haven't found that yet. And that's the one problem that I was kind of hoping that somehow music, we would find this new avenue that is a great way to interact. I mean, obviously online has become very prominent, but it's not really something we can monetize. And so I was really hopeful that we would find something and have a new avenue that would kind of curry favor and bring us into the 21st century, really, as an industry for music, and is yet to materialize a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was such panic initially. It's easy to point fingers, so let's do. But so many organizations, the most obvious thing is to have paid online. But that's not what happened. People were panicking about losing donors and losing patrons, and so they just gave away all these free concerts online.
Yeah.
And so now to go back and try and monetize that is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, the one thing I'm hoping for, and I've had little glimpses of it here and there, is while there's not going to be a new avenue of revenue for the industry, I think that what it will do will draw desire and specialty towards live concerts, and people will really desire and crave that because it's been something that's been withdrawn from them. And I feel like our first season back, I know everyone's trying to figure out how and when, but I think it's going to be gangbusters. I think people are going to crave it, and they're going to go head in as soon as they feel safe because they miss it so much.
But I think you're right. But for how long? I think that'll crest.
Yeah, it's true.
And so, I mean, what I would hope. Well, go back to the restaurant comparison, because we have some awesome local restaurants in the little town that I'm in, and my neighbors and we've all just sort of talked about, we haven't gotten carry out from that one yet. We haven't gotten and we've like really kind of decided for ourselves which are the restaurants we really care about and we really want to support. And so we are intentionally ordering carry out from them on a regular basis to try and just show our support for them. And it's changed our relationship. Before, we just had all these choices and it was what it was. And I didn't really pay much attention to whether they were having a good year or a bad year. It didn't really faze me. I was hungry for this kind of food or that kind of food. But it's forced me to evaluate which ones are really important to me. And now I feel like I have a different sort of a relationship with them. And I think there's the opportunity for the cultural institutions is to change the relationship that they have with people. Instead of, one of the things that's been a bugaboo to me for a long time is that we insist that people consume our art in one way, and that they buy a ticket and they come on a specific day at a specific time. And if you've missed that, then you're out. And if you don't adhere to the rules of engagement for this performance, how you dress, how you act, like if you don't do that, then that's it. And you compare it to pro sports, or even, take your average minor league team is more engaged in their community than most regional orchestras are. And they're way more open to consume this at a bar with your buddies, consume this on television, consume it on your phone, come to the park. There's like a relationship where we just want you to be part of our family. Yeah. And I think there's an opportunity, and I think some organizations will do it. I think that will be interesting. The ones who think, okay, back to the way it was, just show up and shut up, then I think those groups are going to be the ones who suffer.
Yeah. One of the priorities we've been doing in the KCOHO is trying to continue to have a very direct relationship with our donorship. Unlike a regular orchestra that has, orchestra and donors, we have a full set of singers, directors. And so a lot of the time we don't have as much interaction with our donor base as like the NSO does, because the singers are the big names and we're in the pit. But what we've been doing is, one thing we've been doing is we send birthday videos to everybody who's donated to us over the years. And so, like, I just did one. I played Oh Isis and Osiris from Magic Flute, and at the very end of it, I went right into Happy Birthday and gave a little talk and thanked the person for their support. And everybody in the orchestra has been doing that. And it's a little thing, but we want to make sure that we have a personal relationship with these people so that it feels loyal. And I agree with you totally. Like for the restaurant, last week we had to close because one of our staff members had COVID, and we needed to make sure everyone was safe and everyone had negative, and there was enough time for incubation just to make sure there wasn't anything. During that time, customers started posting on their Instagram links to our gift card page so that people could buy gift cards so that we could have cash flow during our week off, because they wanted to support us for doing the right thing and being loyal to us. And I think if we can build that level of loyalty with our artistic institutions, then I feel like it will carry us for a lot longer as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, then it's not one way, right? It's not like we have art and you're going to consume it. It's like it's a relationship.
Yeah.
There was a great book Oh, great book. Decent book. It was the okay book.
It was.
There was
actually,
a book.
it kind of sucked.
It had a front and end.
No, it was. It's well. I read it in the early '90s, and it stuck with me. So it was called The Art of Marketing. It was by a guy named Sergio Zyman, who was for a long time the head of marketing for Coca-Cola, and he was the guy who came out with New Coke. And he said New Coke ended up being the best decision I ever made. And he said, before you, like I'm paraphrasing, but it's like before you get the pitchforks. What I mean by that is we launched New Coke as a reaction to Pepsi because Pepsi was kicking our butts in the Pepsi Challenge. Because what happens, and if you did it today, apparently, it's still the case where if you just did a sip of one or the other, people gravitate towards Pepsi because it's a little sweeter at the beginning. But apparently, if you drink an entire can or bottle or glass of whatever it is, then people go back to Coke. But the Pepsi Challenge capitalized on that initial thing. And so they reacted by changing the formula. And, of course, everything blew up. And he said why it was the best decision of his career was because it forced people to reevaluate, why is Coca-Cola important to me? It forced them to analyze, what does it mean symbolically? What does it mean to me in terms of, what are my memories associated with it? Why do I like this over that? And so this is that opportunity for all of us, is to reach out to our constituencies and make it clear what they mean to us and hopefully what we can mean to them.
Yeah.
It was a pretty interesting story. He also, you remember for a while there was I don't know if you're old enough to know this, Seth, but there was Pepsi Clear. There were all these
the Crystal Clear.
things.
I totally remember that.
He said so that was another thing where they started gaining market share, PepsiCo. And so he said his plan was to destroy the market. So he came out with Tab Clear. And so then everybody perceived it as the Clear being a diet beverage. And then everybody stopped buying Pepsi Clear, even though it had all the same amount of sugar. And he just killed the category.
This guy's brilliant.
It was really interesting, the permutations, and he's the guy writing the book, so he can tell it any way he wants. But it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, that's like writing intentionally horrific operas just to get everyone to stop consuming even the good ones. That's like,
go Sergio.
So what lessons have you brought from being an entrepreneur in the restaurant business to your career as a musician?
Well, there are two aspects of it for me. On a personal level, I make coffee every day at the restaurant, and I enjoy the process of it. I'm good at it. It's not anything I haven't done before. I probably made tens of thousands of drinks.
But you're also, let me interrupt. You're an award-winning barista, right? I mean, when he says he's good at it, I mean, it's outside forces who judge this for a living have verified Seth's self-evaluation of him being good at making coffee.
I'll tell you, one of the greatest side kind of slide overs was for coffee competitions in the U.S. Barista Championships. The first thing you have to do is pour water for the judges, and everybody every time is shaking their hands. You could take a little bit of vitamin I, a little bit Indorol, rock solid. I was juicing for these competitions. It was great.
He took a nap halfway through, but
coffee takes care of it. It's a good balance,
Look at you, man. Seth's playing chess. Don't let him fool you. With coffee, every time I hand a coffee to a customer and they get to see what I've done or taste it, it's a very personal experience, and that's been really great. And I try to kind of think about that for music, even though we're in the pit and we are generally supplementary to whatever is on stage in some sense. I always kind of think about that experience that even though we are walled off, that we can still have that. And that's something I kind of personal level. I try to think about that person in the audience. I want to have that experience for them that I can create, even if it's just playing whole notes. But on the business end of it, watching the restaurant kind of modulate, I have a young staff, having them teach me about
Instagram and kind of online presence and social media and like what's cool and what's working. I feel like I'm on the social media committee for my orchestra, and talking about how we can interact with our public effectively, I've learned a lot of keys of like, being consistently involved in people's social feeds, or finding ways to make yourself seem interesting, and what's a cool post versus what's kind of a self-indulgent post, and those kind of things. And that's been, I feel like the game is going to be played on social media for the next decade or so, if not longer. And so I think that's where our game is played for the orchestra.
So let's stay in that general part of the universe. But so you've taught yourself, or you've learned to play the tuba at a high level, and now you've learned to make coffee at a very high level. How in terms of the learning or the application or the skill development, what kind of crossover in either direction did you find?
Hey, that's an interesting question, Lance.
Yeah, getting ready for competition, for a barista competition, you have to make 4 espressos, 4 cappuccinos, and 4 signature beverages in 15 minutes. And you're judged on taste, temperature, texture, your presentation. You have technique judges. It's very intense. And the experience of preparing for that is very much like an audition, except you're drinking 3 pounds of coffee a day. You get twitches in parts of your body that you didn't know could twitch.
Let's just pause and let that waft over us for a second.
At Lance's age, any part of the body is good. Anyway, please continue, Seth.
So the mentality of kind of applying that, the way I would approach preparing for my coffee competition, very much derived from preparing for orchestral auditions, and that sense of consistency, routine, and expectation. I mean, like, making an espresso requires a lot of physicality, but also a lot of just awareness, and like the way you move your hands, the way you tamp, the way you distribute your coffee grounds. All these things require you to kind of have routine, very much like you practice the technical aspects of an excerpt or something like that. But the biggest part of selling it is committing to the judges or to your customer some sense of connection of like why this coffee is important, why this tastes good, why you have this ability with this one product. And you think about it, we have coffee beans that were maybe 3 months ago in the hands of a farmer in rural Ethiopia that he handpicked, and that are sent to you, and that I am grinding up, putting hot water on, and serving to a person. They have a very direct, tangible connection to this person in Ethiopia. And very rarely do we have such really specific connections. And establishing that, I think, is one of my biggest charges I consider as a barista. And when I think about that for music, I think about the same thing, that my job when I have Mahler on my stand is somehow working to create exactly the experience that he intended for audiences back in 1900 to hear and have that emotional response. And I think about the fact that in 2020, 2021, if we do the same thing, if we do it right, the people in the audience are going to have the same emotional experience that people in 1905 had when they heard Mahler's Fifth for the first time. And I think that's an incredible human connection that is driven through the medium, whether it be art or talking about coffee.
That's pretty cool. So what other are you going to be learning to do new? I like learning new stuff.
Yeah.
So I have a book on coin magic and card tricks right there. That's like kind of my next thing. Are you like a lifelong learner in that way?
Yeah. So after I got to the U.S. Barista Championships, I felt like, first off, I realized I couldn't commit the amount of time I needed to be like a world barista champion, which was one of my initial goals. Also, I don't have tattoos or a beard, and I don't wear flannel like the best of them. So I was never going to be a leader of these baristas.
Could you please, just for my amusement, could you please just start segueing, like morphing into that guy? That would be awesome.
And so a couple of years ago, the first year we opened the restaurant, I was acting principal with the opera still. I hadn't won the job. The job hadn't had an audition yet. And also Baltimore Symphony asked me to play with them. So I was playing with Baltimore for the season, playing with the opera, and opening the restaurant, which was a little nuts. But at the end of that Baltimore season, we went on tour, and the tour was great, and we got to play the Proms and some great venues in Great Britain and Ireland. But then, it'd been a crazy year. There was like 1 week where I was at the restaurant, I played with Baltimore Symphony, I played with National Symphony, and I played with the opera. And it was like that was like a weird week for me, but that was a normal week. So I told my wife, I was like, we need to go on a trip. And the best trip we could do was
without my tuba.
Yeah. Leave it in Ireland and see what happens to it. We went to the south of France. We went to Lyon, and then kind of we went all the way down through the Rhone, and I started meeting with winemakers, and I was incredibly taken with just the beauty of it, and these people are making excellent wines, but they're farmers. They're salt of the earth guys and girls, and they're incredible. And I was bitten by the wine bug, and so I decided right then and there to start going down the master sommelier route. So that's my new learning. I'm training in the court of master sommeliers to become a master sommelier. I run the wine program at the restaurant, and it's exceptionally gratifying. It's more my pace too. I don't need to have tattoos or flannel or a beard. I can wear a Brooks Brothers shirt and not look like a douchebag.
That's a sentence that
well,
doesn't.
It's just a different kind, but sure, whatever.
Is there a particular part of the process of learning to do a thing that you're drawn to? Like, do you Yeah.
For me, I think anything that I become attracted to, I want to learn everything about it. I want to know everything there is to know about it. Like, I just am fascinated by the process. I mean, I spend my days with podcasts, and I'm reading books, and I'm going to seminars because, wine, like coffee, has that tangible connection where not only can we drink something that was from a very specific place made by a specific person, we can also do vintages where you can this wine, there's a restaurant in DC. It's called St. Anselm, and they have a great Madeira program. And Madeiras are wine from the island of Madeira it's just off of Africa. But Madeiras can age forever. And they have pre-Civil War Madeiras. You can get Madeira from 1860. And it's incredible that you have the ability to drink something that was pre-Civil War, and it's in existence today. And that's an incredible part of wine, that you have a very specific time and place captured in a bottle. And so I'm super attracted to that. And then I want to understand, there's a book called, I can't remember the exact name, but it's like a history of the world in 5 cups, and a history of the world through coffee, tea, book. Wine. Yeah. And you see how cultures have taken in these drinks and turned them into part of their society and part of their culture and part of their people. And that's what I want to know. And so that's where I'm driven. Those human stories are just super fascinating to me.
Have you ever toyed with the idea of combining all of these interests into a thing? I mean, you know that you have a superpower, which is deep knowledge in now a third area, which you could you should do what you want, but you could deploy in a pretty interesting way.
People always ask me if I would play my tuba at my restaurant, and I say I like being successful, so no.
You should get a house tuba quartet. So to play quietly over in the corner. And by tuba quartet, I don't even mean 2 tubas, 2 footings. I mean 4 tubas. Like go all in.
Big ones, bathtub ones. Big.
Nothing drives big sales of vintage champagne like the liberation of Sisyphus, right?
Yeah.
Nothing says celebrate your anniversary with us like 4 tubas playing.
I would. I would love to try to find a way to put it all together. It's hard. It's really hard to I want music to be respected, and so it's hard to have a hospitality environment where you can have a split focus on both. I think it's possible, but I haven't figured it out yet. And especially, to pay musicians correctly in the scope of a restaurant economics is very tough. It's a hard thing, and I would never pay musicians like under their value. I would never want to like lowball a musician, but it's really hard to have like a like proper musician, proper pay, and to have that fit into the scheme of restaurants. You know, if you're making 10% profit, you're okay. 15% profit's good. Think about that in the scope of a month. 10% is 3 days. If you have 3 off days in a month, your profit, you're already at bottom, and then from there you start digging out. And so it's a tricky thing, and a lot of people don't understand that perceived value when they would come to a restaurant that has live music to be like, oh, I should pay more for this. Mm-hmm. It's a tricky medium to cross.
Well, and I didn't even necessarily mean like just for you personally. Is there a way to tie those together? But maybe it's too complex. Life is short.
I'm either drunk or hyped up on caffeine.
So
and that's just in the pit.
Yeah. Speaking of drunk and hyped up on caffeine, I wanted to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also thank you, Michael, for allowing me a medium for increasingly awkward segues into your spots every single episode. I want to ask you about subbing in an orchestra, which you obviously have quite a bit of experience with. And I actually remember that week when you played with Baltimore with the NSO and with the opera, because I'm sure Steve asked you if you could play the week with the NSO, which was all kids concerts. It was like 5 or 6 services. You couldn't, so he asked me. And so I could do it except for like one of them. Yep, and then I said I can do 5 out of the 6, and then he was like, let me see if so then you could do that, and then you were like now I'm playing with all 3. I was like, you are literally the busiest orchestral tuba player. You have to be in the world this week. And Seth's genuinely humble. He's like, yeah, maybe, but I was like, no, there's no way that anybody is playing with more than nobody's playing with 4 major symphony orchestras this week. So yeah, you were dunking on all of us at that point. So. So you get the chance to, you being someone listening, gets the chance to sub with an orchestra that doesn't have to be the level of the National Symphony, but is just, appropriately over your head. Like you really want to do a great job. What is your advice?
It's interesting. When I moved to DC at random, like I was living in Montreal, my visa was up. I didn't want to go back to Boston. Because I didn't go to school there, and I felt like breaking into the gig scene there would be very hard. And going back to Chicago, where there is a gajillion tuba players who are wildly qualified, I was like, I can't do that. And my best friend, Tim Higgins, he was living here, and he's like, you should come move here. Why not? And I was like, the military bands. And he's like, don't worry about it. And so I moved here, and I didn't really know what would happen. And I got to town. I played for Steve. And within 3 weeks, he hired me, and I was kind of shocked. I was 24, and it was like a last-minute concert for La Forza and Check 5 with Manfred Honeck, which is like nice. Pretty intense, yeah. And I kind of started like thinking about, I work kind of continued after that, and I started thinking about like what it takes to be a great freelancer and to sub, and the obvious stuff is always there. Be prepared, know your music, sound good. But the stuff that like I don't think we talk about a lot is the way your behavior is in the orchestra. And the biggest thing, so Matt Gilford, the bass trombone National Symphony, he actually is from the same hometown that I am. So I've known him for a long time. That's kind of cool. Know that. And, actually, like my small town just south of Boston, but Matt Gilford's from there. John Nelson, his mom was my piano teacher and his dad was my band director, my first teacher. It was a cool little town that just had some good brass player coming out. Are
you making this up? You could be at this point. You're like, let me just choose another one. And Gail Williams is also from my hometown.
But Matt Gilford is an incredibly talented guy and super gracious. Yeah. And
yes.
Sitting next to him, he'll never really let you know. Like, he's super professional. And if you are nailing it or not nailing it, he's going to you can treat you great. But the one thing I realized is he's going to feel more comfortable if he doesn't have to worry about me at all. And that's the biggest thing. Like if when you come into sub in an orchestra, you should never create any sense of stress for your colleagues. And now being on the other side of it, being a member of an orchestra, when people sub in, it is definitely one of the more anxious parts for us is like, is this guy going to come in? Is he going to know like the mood, especially with opera and ballet? Some of the stuff is erratic and it's out of nowhere. Some of these entrances. And so that's my biggest thing is like, can you come in and can you create an atmosphere where they don't have to worry about you? And the other thing is like, you know, you have to kind of play the talking game a little bit. And when you're right out of college, you're kind of like, Mahler, Shostakovich, whatever. But that's not the way, you know, this is a lifestyle for a lot of people. And so it's like, you know, I feel like when you're young, you should read a lot. You should know a lot of other information. And you know, you should know how to talk about replacing a toilet or building a deck in your house. I feel like that's where a lot of your conversations are going. And I feel like having those kind of interactions with professional colleagues are a little bit more natural than talking about this time you played really loud or you made this really incredible sound on your shift.
One time when I subbed for Steve with the NSO, was another kids concert when they had just gotten back from a tour of Europe. Like they had gotten home the day before, and he wanted to he extended his trip, and he also just didn't want to be playing like 24 hours after he landed. And the orchestra was dragging, understandably. I don't mean musically. I just mean, it was like low energy walking in because they were all jet lagged. And one of the things that we played was the fast movement, the second movement, I think, of Shostakovich 10, which is like, feels like driving a race car, right? And everybody like was low energy, and then the music was like insane. I mean, it was great. They didn't sound tired at all. But I leaned over to Matt and I said, "Do you think everyone would get mad at me if I raised my hand and asked if we could read the rest of the symphony?" Which he thought was very funny. So under no circumstances can you make any suggestions, but like especially when they were all dragging. But yeah, you're right. You got to be a good person. And boy, do I show up anytime I'm subbing for somebody in DC. I show up because I live 25 miles out. I usually show up before the percussion starts setting up. I mean, just because like I'd rather get there an hour and 45 minutes beforehand because I don't do it that often, and just be able to warm up and chill out and get in my headspace, do some breathing, and then like read Twitter the rest of the time, like be sweating or have you or Steve or anybody get a phone call saying like, he showed up, but we had started to make other plans, that doesn't need to happen.
Yeah, I've come across people who just do that. Like they feel like they don't treat the experience of playing with a big orchestra in the kind of guise that it is. It's where it's like you should show up 45 minutes. I'm a member. I'm a tenured member, and I show up an hour in advance just because I take my work really seriously. Like when I'm going to sit in the pit, I have a job to do. Like when we were doing the ring cycle, I was getting there 2.5 hours early just so I could spend. One of the best times for that was the house was still dark, and I'd just go sit in the pit. And because like the opening of Siegfried's second act, the house is dark and you have to play, and just getting yourself in that mindset where you are really kind of preparing yourself for like serious music making. I feel like that's our job. And it's like, sure, they're paying you for the 2-hour call, but that money really counts for the time around that 2-hour call. It's like accommodating that 2-hour call,
I saw the dress rehearsal of Siegfried, which you'll remember I came and right before it started and was like not super helpful to all of you guys. It was just like, like thumbing my nose at you and Lee and Steve and what's the name of the he's a Patreon page. Oh yeah, Doug, that's his name. Yeah, all of you knuckleheads and Pilkington and everybody. But you sounded ridiculously awesome on the whole thing. But yeah, like there's some super exposed tuba stuff that it's also like there when it's done correctly, as it was by Mr. Cook here. There's like tons of nuance and music making, and it's not just like tuba jock like nail it. Hey, did you hear how even my 16th notes were? It's just like there's a lot. Yeah, it was exceptional.
Yeah, it's definitely like a high water mark for my life. To get to play a ring cycle was just spectacular. It was something I think about often. And, you know, the greatest compliment I had was the music director at the time who was doing the performances. He came downstairs to me after the opening night and was like, "You sounded like Hitchcock. It was incredible." And I thought that was the best compliment I could ever imagine. Because, you know, the opening of the second act, you're supposed to be kind of mimicking the dragon coming out of the cave, and it's this really mysterious music, and you're coming out of nowhere, and that was a really special time for me.
Awesome.
Robin Hitchcock?
I think it's Johnny.
Johnny.
Wait, Lance, who is Robin Hitchcock?
There was like a one-hit wonder pop singer from the 90s.
There you go. I missed that. I must have been listening to Fish. I just wanted to say Fish just to piss off Jim Nova. So speaking of Jim Nova, you know, we want to take a moment to thank the fine folks at the Mary Pappert School of Music at Duquesne University in beautiful and sunny Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is only one of those. So the Mary Pappert School is a great school. There's a lot of really awesome things happening there. If you want to find out about those awesome things, go to the link in the show notes, and you'll be taken to a page, show you all the brass going on at Duquesne. Fantastic faculty, great ensembles, great opportunities. So, and very, very, very special thanks to Jim Diddly-doo-da-dee-dee-dee-doo Nova for making that possible. that was the dumbest one yet.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to do after that. He gets if anyone is like, say, Seth's mother, who's never listened to this podcast before and never will ever again, I'm sorry, Mrs. Cook, that you know, Lance always gives Jim a new middle name, and but it's always been actual words.
Well, those are words.
Until now. There you have it. So, Seth, what is an orchestra that if you could play with any orchestra, well, I mean, hell, if any of us could play with like a youth orchestra today, I think we'd all like leap at the opportunity. But not thinking about COVID, if you could play with any orchestra tonight that you've never played with, which would it be?
It'd probably be Chicago. I never got a chance to get to play with the symphony out there. I've known Gene for a couple of years now. One of the kind of coolest parts is Gene is a big late Verdi and Puccini fan, and so often he would fly out to DC to hear us whenever we play. And so often I'd look out in the audience and see a guy who on his worst day sounds a million times better to me than my best day, listening to me. So
I don't know if it's a million. It's no more than 100,000 times. I mean, a million's a little dramatic.
But yeah, I mean, the stuff they do is just, you know, I mean, you went to school in Chicago. I spent every Thursday night in Northwestern going downtown, listening to the symphony and just biting my hand because it was so good. And I will tell you,
sweet if you screwed up and bit the person next to you's hand.
I'll tell you one of my most horrifying great moments in Chicago Symphony student sneaking into concert moments is my first year there. You know, I always had my technique at intermission to like wait around and to sneak in and try to find the empty seat. Yep. And they were doing planets. And if you've been to Orchestra Hall on the balcony there, when you come up, there is like 3 levels down, but the walkway is at the top of the chairs going down going to the front railing, and then there's chairs behind you. And they have like long stretches, like 20 seats in a row. And like in the middle of one of those rows, right as the lights are going down, there's an empty seat. And I'm like, I'm going to grab it. And so I go and I step over the chair, totally not estimating how far it is. And I tear my pants all the way from my fly, all the way around through my crotch. And these rich old people are standing just staring at me. And I'm just like, ladies. I'm going to sit and listen to and
Is it drafty?
She goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine."
Why do you ask?
I'm just a tuba player. This is a very normal experience for us tuba players. But I'll tell you, I had to stifle my laughing in Saturn and Uranus, which was louder than I've ever imagined it.
Saturn and what?
Uranus (parentheses) is exposed.
It was a long L ride home.
I feel like I should apologize to your mother again. Yeah, there you go. That's
I
You
have
awesome.
probably didn't have to
number of
worry
those
about
moments.
people sitting near you. They're like, homeless or tuba player?
Yeah.
Well, there was a guy. Was he there when you were there? Hitz. There was a gentleman who would sit outside and had a tuba, and he would play. And
Yeah, he
Gina
was
taught him a
great.
couple licks. He
Yeah.
could play Mahler 1 and Shostakovich 5, and he'd go
Yes.
bum 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 beep bum over and over again. And he'd
Yeah.
stop every once and be like, "I ain't doing this for free." Bum 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 bum.
He was awesome. What was his name? He was
He passed
great.
away a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I know, but
He was fantastic.
yeah, I saw him on the L once with the tuba, like the lead pipe is like duct taped on, but
Right?
yeah, he nailed it. Mahler 1 and Chaska, bum 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 beep, every time, over and over again. Nailed it.
It was Dave Zirkle, wasn't it?
Yeah. He took the duct tape off, but it's basically still the same guy. Yeah. Yeah. He's like University of Michigan. He's all fancy now. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why Zirkle. I was going through the Filofax in my head, and I was like, well, I don't know. Zirkle, there's a bus. Let's push him under there.
Who should I take a pot shot at? Yeah,
That's
yeah. I think it's Zirkle's turn. Yeah. What piece would you play if you could play anything with the Chicago Symphony?
I have
Not in front of orchestra hall, in it.
Oh, in it.
I have a list of pieces that I've wanted to play in my life, and I've got most of them done, which is great. But the one piece I've never got to play is Copeland 3, and that's like a dream piece for me. When the first time I heard like Warren's recording, it's just, it's incredible. And, when I studied with Warren, I talked to him about this, how great it was, and he just kind of walked me through the experience of recording that, and I've always just wanted to have a chance to see if I could put my shine on that. And it's just one of those pieces that have eluded me. And being an opera now, I don't know if I ever will. But I will say my list has converted to a lot more operas I want to play that I like. Die Frau und der Schatten is really high on my list. Wozzeck, and some of the bigger Wagner operas. Obviously Ringcycle is great, but Parsifal, I've played stuff from Parsifal, and it's a lift, but it's just spiritual music in a way that I really, really want to experience.
Yeah, Wozzeck's got some tasty tuba stuff in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the Met with Morris that was on stage, and Morris sounded incredible and on the on-stage tuba stuff, and Chris sounded great in the pit too. It was really, really great stuff last year.
Oh, wow. I missed that. I've traveled so much. I think Lance is the same way, that we traveled so much for so long that I rarely left my house for many, many years, and now I'm dying to leave my house. So yeah, I'm ready to.
I'm still good.
Yeah. Yeah, but the old me used to get to various cities. Well, also I procreated, which is I think also a factor. So it's kind of like, yep. I'm compiling a for when he is particularly problematic at some point as a teenager. I'm compiling a list of gigs that I had to turn down because there wasn't childcare to cover it. Like Iceland Symphony, like Candida Tanglewood. Like there's a list of things that I'm compiling to hold over his head someday. That's kind, right?
It is a kind.
Some people buy vintage bottles for their kid over the year they're born, but you can have a list of.
Think of how those will age. Yeah. It's quite a bouquet coming off of that one.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, you took both income and art from Daddy. So, but yeah, sure. Tell me about how you're 14 and persecuted. Please continue. I want to circle back quickly to your to playing the Ring Cycle, and you're going to play Siegfried for the first time. Talk about what did you do to prepare for that mentally leading up to the gig? And then what did you do before the gig? because that's as high pressure as a tuba player is going to ever experience in an orchestra.
Well, the music director, Philippe Auguin, and, he's a tough guy. When I first time I played for him was Tristan and Isolde. I called him last minute to come play, and in the first act, you have 25 minutes off, and then you come in on a B flat at the top of the staff, it's A sharp, and it's just like tuba and Isolde, and it's pianissimo, and it's scary as all get out. And I had no idea this was coming. And I was counting, and I was in the right place. And he looks at me, and he has this glare, like I just defecated on his score. Like that's the way he looks at me. It's just terrifying. I literally had to get him a night guard after I started playing with him because I started grinding my teeth because it's so intense. But he looks at me and he goes, and then boom, like right before I play. And I'm like, and I mean, it was terrifying. And I got used to dealing with the fact that he was always going to think I played too loud and always think I was going to be not great. It's just, he was a hard guy.
So he gave you a preemptive hand.
Preemptive hand coming on an A sharp pianissimo after not playing for 25 minutes. You can imagine what's going to happen. Luckily, I think I maybe missed in rehearsal, but it went fine. But it was terrifying. Actually, Gene came to one of the concerts and said that he crapped all over it once with Schulte in Carnegie Hall, so he knew where I felt. But when we got ready for ring cycle, I was really terrified of like what he was going to do. I emotionally, it's such an intense adventure for what you want to do as a musician. So I did a lot of preparation. I did a lot of thinking. I had spoken with Jeremy Wilson, the former second trombone in Vienna, and talked to him about the tuba player who had won there. He's a young guy, and I was like, "How was his audition?" He goes, in Vienna they have a weird structure where if you get 14 votes, you are advanced. If you get like 18 votes, it's automatic. You appointed at that point in time. So like in the first round, if you get 18 votes, the audition's over.
Huh.
And when he had to play Siegfried, the very opening, you come in like on a low C, it goes to D flat C. And he's like, we were sitting there in the audience and we didn't know when he started. And all of a sudden there was sound and it came and then it went away. And it was this seamless entrance and exit from audible that was so incredible that won the audition, and that ended the audition right then and there. And so I always kind of had a goal of like really exploring like coming and leaving the sound world. That was like my biggest goal. So a lot of that kind of practice. The first day of ring cycle, so to rehearse for ring cycle you have 4 operas. We had 12 weeks of rehearsal. They didn't really tell us what we were starting with, and the first day he wanted to start with Siegfried. And so I wasn't ready. I thought we'd start with Rheingold. It seemed like a logical thing to start with.
Did you raise your hand and be like, "Excuse me, Maestro, there's an order"?
Yeah, I practiced my low E flat. I don't know about the C thing.
I can play all the E flats for half an hour if you need me to.
Yeah, and so we started off, and I'm playing it, and it was going well. But I was it was nerve wracking. It was very intense, and at the end of it, he stopped and he put his baton down. I really thought he was about to like just light me up, and he applauded, and it was a moment that I was like, wow. It was such a necessary moment for me emotionally to be able to continue to explore making music with that piece, because it was lifted, the intensity of kind of his ire that I was afraid of that I didn't have to worry about anymore. And so that allowed me then to see how soft can I go. The very first entrance for tuba in the beginning of the opera in the first act, it's these descending chords coming from the bassoons, and then it descends down, and then it's just a low B flat for tuba. It's like out of nowhere, and it's this great moment. And I really want to see what can it be like to just sneak in, and all of a sudden you feel B flat, but you don't hear it. It's just a sense like maybe the air conditioner is broken a little bit, that kind of sense. And like I really wanted to have those moments, and that was my vision, is like, how do I evoke the dragon? How do I evoke the mood? Such a great opera. There's so many great moments in that opera, just really incredible music. And like, how can I create that? Like, what tools do I have at my disposal? What tools do I need to develop so that it is so explicitly clear audibly what's happening? And that was where my brain was getting ready for the opera.
Wow.
And then I split my pants.
Yeah.
I actually, I did split my pants one time with him too. Like what happened?
You need an intervention, dude? Is there something?
It's called owning a restaurant is half the problem. I was putting away my chimbaso, and the chimbaso.
Speaking figuratively, or this is.
I bent over and my pants split. And I was like, crap. Anyway, so I was in the lounge with Lee Rogers, principal trombone, and we're just drinking whiskeys, and we'd been drinking for a while. It's like it was a matinee, so we had Sunday night, and went to the bathroom to like wash our glasses out, and all of a sudden we hear a knock on the door. I'm like, who knocks on the bathroom door? And we open up, and it's Maestro again. In his tails, he's like, "Would you gentlemen like to join me in my room for some champagne?" I was like, okay. Like he was supposed to meet with the head of the IMF, and she bailed on him, and he had 4 bottles of champagne.
He went from the head of the IMF to you and Lee. That's like,
exactly.
Let's see who can kill 4 bottles of champagne. I know.
It's I'm sitting there in his conductor room with a huge rip in my pants, and I'm like trying to hold it. And he has 4 bottles of champagne. He doesn't drink, and so Lee and I are just like, oh. But it was incredible. He told us he was, he studied with. It's just the story of my life.
I'm just laughing because he's stuck with the you two knuckleheads from the low brass section. Only one of you is fully wearing pants. It's like
Right.
that's wonderful.
What do you expect, But he studied with Schulte and von Carrion, and he was really close friends with Kleiber, and he told us all these stories about his relationship with Kleiber, and it was just we were in his room for like 3.5 hours, so it's like 10 o'clock now. We are sauced. I mean, we were already there.
At this point, Lee's pants are broken, but they're off. Like, just to get comfortable. Yeah,
wearing them like a scarf.
It's the glory. I'll tell you, a lot of musicians want to be on stage. They want the glory. I love being in a pit. I can rip my pants and nobody knows, and it's good. We're good to go. I don't have to worry about that stuff. I really figured it out. So,
Lance, you want to talk about Houchin Horns?
I think we probably should. Houchin Horns is our newest sponsor, and they have come on strong. And if you're not familiar with their website, you should go right away because it's fantastic. It's a great. Of course, you can buy all the things that they want you to buy there, but it's an amazing resource. There's some awesome Q&As and interviews and profiles with top players. But Houchin Horns aims to spread the joy of music through providing the highest level of product services and resources to the brass playing community. Houchin Horns has newly expanded policies that make it easier to purchase and test drive the best equipment during a time when safety and staying at home are top priorities. 15-day money-back guarantee with free shipping on all new instruments and accessories with multiple easy financing options on all inventory. Terms and conditions apply. You can browse vintage and consignment instruments at houchinhorns.com. And if you enter the promo code Junkies11 at online checkout, you will get $500 off your purchase of a new instrument. So head to Houchin Horns right now, or to Houchin Horns right now. And very special thanks to Jim Dibbity-Doo-Dah Ding Dong Day for working in the same orchestra as Mark Houchin.
Oh,
see, I feel bad.
Goodness.
Mark's nice. Like, not that Jim's not nice, but Jim can take a punch better than Mark. I'm guessing. I don't really know. Like Mark just seems genuine.
Exactly. Nova is like you and I, where it's like there's just like a permanent kick me sign like on his back, Whereas like
Mark's I would feel bad.
Mark's like a normal human who's like, who I think like genuinely tries to like figure out like what can I add to this situation wherever he is, It's like so. Yeah,
Right.
it's not Mark. Let me put it this way: Mark is not the kind of guy who would go drink champagne with his boss like without really wearing pants.
Right. And Mark saved all those puppies, which was really nice.
And he refused any press. It was
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know how he does it.
And there was a kid in a well in Pittsburgh. You didn't even hear about it because he just fixed it. Yeah.
Yep.
He just
solved.
He just made it go away.
Yeah, that's Mark Houchin. Jim, you got some work to do.
Yeah, right? Yeah, we just wanted to. So Seth, what's next for you? You've done so much. In closing, like what do you still have to conquer? Your restaurant is killer. you're at the top of the tuba world. You know, you're like your charitable work, your work in the humanities. I mean, you've like, you know, all of the above. Like what's next?
Yeah,
Pants reinforcement.
Yeah, pants. Other than
I'm gonna develop a thread that is like the stuff they haul in marlins on. Just make pants out of that.
That's pretty
I'll
good.
show them.
that is pretty good.
Marlin
There you go.
line pants.
I mean,
See that he started. Hey Lance, we broke him. He started all genuine, and then I just gave him a softball genuine question, and he's talking about sewing pants with marlin wire, like, you know, marlin proof. Anyway,
there are plenty of moments of embarrassing stories that we can get into at some point.
and that
We have a
some
bonus
point is
episode.
going to be the bonus episode in about 4 minutes. So yeah, so don't forget them.
My next thing is I'm going to try to. I want to do more restaurants. I want to do a couple more restaurants. I mean, you know, we did one. It's great. It's three and a half years now. It's time to kind of do another one. The process of like gestating a restaurant it's exciting. It's exhausting. It's intense, but it's very rewarding. And so that's the next big thing for me right now. Obviously, like I got tenure. You know, I started acting tuba in the opera in 2015, but the audition wasn't until 2019. And
right.
So I got tenure last year. And so I actually want to explore this world now where I don't have that. I've kind of got that off my back where I'm not worrying about taking auditions. I'm not worrying about what job I want to be in. I really want to explore working with my colleagues and really, you know, I have some incredible colleagues play, like getting to work with Jeff and Lee and so many of the other principals in the orchestra. I really want to, see artistically how far we can go. You know, the opera orchestra I feel like has the ability to become really a top tier opera orchestra. Like right now we're in the midst of you have the Met, you have Lyric, and you have San Francisco, and I want to see just how far we can define ourselves as a premier orchestra, and I'm excited about taking that venture on and really seeing what the future holds. We have a kind of a new administration over the last couple of years who have that same vision for bigger operas, more opera, and kind of reinstalling opera as a great artistic form that is relevant, which is it's a tough ask, but I'm excited to try to do that.
Cool. I can't even poke fun at that answer. That was a good answer. Oh, well, Lance, go ahead. I've known Seth forever since he was in high school. So there you
Nerd.
go. There you go.
I've seen every iteration of Hitz's hair. I remember, you know, I worked at Tanglewood for a couple summers, and Hitz would be rolling up with Tom Couples, and you could see a shadow would be cast over the front gate of Tanglewood because the hair would be just taking up so much of the sun.
There's a humongous Q-tip coming our way.
It's funny too because of Kripalu, this like fancy yoga like house is right there, and some of the craziest people you could ever imagine meeting, especially during All Juice Week, would come just sauntering into Tanglewood. And it's hard sometimes to know if it was a Kripalu person or Hitz, you know, kind of walking up to the gate. So
Pretty good.
I've approached the gate. Yeah, back in the day, I approached the gates at Tanglewood in all of the states of being. So yeah, that's pretty funny. Did you? And when I first met you was when you were in Maui, right?
Yeah.
When I came to visit. Did I have the ponytail then?
I don't remember, but I have to give you a plug, man. Hitz is the reason I went to Northwestern. He came and sat next to me. He was in Northwestern, and
This guy can succeed there.
This guy seems like a dumbass.
Seems like a safe bet.
And he goes to a fancy school.
Yeah. Hitz came, sat next to me. He played Fountains of Rome in front of us, and I was in high school, and he was like, you got to check out Northwestern, and you got to check out Rex Martin. And that's the first time I ever thought about going to Northwestern, and look at me now.
Look. I'm glad
you have ownership of this.
I'm glad everything is going well, or else I'd have to be giving like an on-air apology right now. So, yep. But I feel like, you know, your restaurant success, all of it, it's in some way due to me. So, yeah. There you go.
We're gonna have. I should create like a signature like cocktail for you, the Andy Hitz. Like maybe one of those ones with, like a big foamy top on it, and a big straw or something.
No, you have to change the top depending on the time, depending on whether there's a pandemic or not. This is actually pretty tame for the pandemic right now. It's not tame. I mean, it looks like it just looks like a medium-sized bird nest right now, and not a, is it bird nest? Bird's nest? Is that plural? It's like attorneys generals'
like deer.
Deers. All right. On that awkward note, that is going to do it. Thank you to all of our Patreon patrons who actually hung out with us during this and asked some questions that we are going to answer during the bonus episode. We have bonus episodes with every single guest. If you would like to learn how to become a patron, to access that and a whole bunch of content that is exclusive to Patreon patrons, go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies. And you can check out our still pretty darn brand new website, which is at pedalnotemedia.com. We completely revamped that. And is there anything else that I'm forgetting, Lance?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. I think that's good. So, Seth, hang on for the bonus episode. And that is going to do it for another episode of The Brass Junkies.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.